Back, hour number 2 of the program. Thanks for hanging out with us. We are Sports Take. Let's hit that like button, friends, if you could. We do appreciate it. He's Derek. I am Rob. All right, so let me give you the latest from Woj, Adrian Wojnarowski, chiming in, Derek, as he wants to do here. ESPN is about 24 minutes ago. ESPN sources: Bucks are narrowing group of top candidates in franchise's head coaching search to Nick Nurse, Golden State assistant Kenny Atkinson, Toronto assistant Adrian Griffin. These coaches will be part of the final conversations with Milwaukee leadership this week. He then follows that up about a minute later with Nurse still looms prominently in Phoenix and Philadelphia searches, sources say, and the reports are that the Sixers are talking to Nurse this week. So let's dig into a couple of those. I know you keep a close eye on the Bucks. What's your sense there? What's your sense of, obviously it's Budenholzer is not going to be in consideration there in Milwaukee. He was the guy they just let go. But
right.
What are you thinking in terms of next? See, I think they're the most attractive job. Like the Sixers comes with a million questions.
I agree.
Phoenix, at least you have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. They have their fair share of questions too. But I think Milwaukee's the most attractive job.
I agree, because you have Giannis and you're going to bring back most of that nucleus from this season. I think Philadelphia is a very appealing situation, but I think a head coach has to wonder, what's the situation with Harden? How much room do you have to try to make this roster better? Where's Embiid? We know Embiid's still stinging from Doc Rivers being let go. Where's Embiid head-wise in terms of, does he want to be here? Is he on board with whoever, if I come in to try to turn this thing around? But I do think you're right. You look at Phoenix's situation. How much more does Chris Paul have left in the tank?
That's the problem, and you're really capped out beyond that. Like there's not a lot of great options. They're top heavy as heck, man. They really are.
You got Barnett, you got Booker, but what do you have after that? I mean, you got a nice team, but this team always falls short for some reason. Milwaukee won a championship a couple of seasons ago. Giannis got hurt in the first series against Miami this year. You don't know how that would have played itself out had they been healthy. Milwaukee is going to be there. Of the teams looking for a head coach, Milwaukee is going to be in the thick of things again next season, as long as they keep that team healthy. I agree with you. I think Milwaukee is the most appealing job right now because that whole roster is solidified. Milwaukee's going to make some minor changes. They got a couple of guys that won't come
Middleton
back.
To free agent.
Yeah. But, they're going to be a solid nucleus. As long as Giannis is in the middle of things they're going to be a solid nucleus. Great position for Nick Nurse to be in, to have his pick of teams, especially not just rebuilding teams, but teams that are on the cusp of being a lot better than they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this gets back to the whole Sixers thing. It is incredibly complicated because you don't know if Harden's going to be back. You don't know if they ultimately want to have Harden back. You don't know where Embiid's, as you said, headspace is. Can you trade Tobias Harris? Are you interested in trading Tobias Harris? If Harden leaves, who's playing point guard for this team? Where are they from a depth perspective with that bench that we're looing at? So it's tough. Let's get back to the Embiid happiness thing. By all accounts, he wanted Doc Rivers here. And I was listening to Bill Simmons talk about this. Bill Simmons of The Ringer. One of the things that he said was, as of Monday of last week, Doc Rivers was still going to be the coach. And then he intimated that James Harden, put the kibosh on that. And Doc's out. If I'm hearing that, so let's go back to what Keith Pompey reported. Keith Pompey, our friend of the show, reported last week that there's mutual interest in Harden going to the Rockets on both sides. And it's not a ploy just to negotiate the Sixers up, just to get his leverage up with them. And as you know, I have a great deal of respect for Keith and his reporting.
Yes.
But I just don't know. I just wonder what ultimately is going on, because it feels like if you're going to run Doc out of here and you're Daryl Morey, you're listening to James Harden to some extent, Are you going to do that if he's not going to be here next year? And you're not going to make a hard play to bring him back next year?
Rob, I think this Harden thing is a ploy in a lot of ways to get leverage with this team, to get better leverage with this team in terms of getting what he wants. If it's truth to the rumor that Harden had a hand in Doc Rivers being let go, if what Bill Simmons says is true, that as of Monday, Rivers was coming back, that tells me that Harden has more clout with Morey than Embiid does, number one. Number two, why would James Harden, as much as he wants to go to Houston, as we started hearing that rumor Christmas Day,
right?
Why would you want to go to a team that won 22 games and lost 60? Now, Houston's roster has a lot of good young talent, but they're not there yet. James Harden's 33 years old. Why would you want to start over? I know you live down there. You have a lot of contacts, a lot of inroads down there, but this is about trying to grab a ring. You have your money, you have your fame, about trying to grab a ring. Why would you want to go anywhere else but a team that already is close to being a Final Four team, so to speak?
Right.
But it goes back. Would Morey actually give this dude a max contract at this stage?
Mm-hmm.
Would you? That's not.
I would not. No, Derek. I want him. I hope the Houston thing is real. I hope Houston offers him 4 years at crazy money. Brian Windhorst put out there this weekend as well. He used the term when discussing this. There's an appetite for 4 years, $200 million around the NBA for James Harden. That's $50 million per year. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm out. Here's what I would do. I would let him walk. I would try to trade Tobias Harris. I'm not saying you can automatically do it, but that's what I would try to do. He's in the last year of that deal. And I figure out a way to bring in some guys who are going to cost you kind of like what PJ Tucker cost you in that range to play point guard and try to get some shooters in here. And if I may take a little bit of a step back this year, then I take a little bit of a step back. That's okay. I don't want to hamstring myself to James Harden for 4 years at $50 million a year. Sorry. No thanks.
See, you know what, Rob? I'm with you 100%. But if you get what you want, even with Embiid here, the product may not be good enough to win 54 games. The product may not be good enough to be one of the top 3 seeds in the East. The product may make you sweat it out and you become a play-in team. Are you going to be satisfied with that? Because we're going to be sitting here screaming about this team going backwards instead of forwards. I have no problem trading Tobias Harris. If James Harden walks, he walks. But because of what we've been talking about, this team is so strapped in terms of how much money they can spend to try to make this roster better. It's not a guarantee the roster is going to be better if you let both of these guys walk.
It's not.
So are you as a prominent 76ers fan, a prominent Philadelphia sports fan, if it goes south instead of going north, are you going to be okay with that for next season?
Yeah, listen, I think it's a very fair question, Derek. And after asking people to sit through the process where it was just garbage for years, it's a hard thing to ask this fan base in particular to take a quote unquote step back. But if the alternative is James Harden depreciating like a car, when you buy a new car and pull out of the lot, you know what I mean? By the second or third year, you're constantly going to the mechanic for getting Band-Aid measures done to your car and it's bleeding you dry, then I'll take a step back. I just will. But because at least I'll have my eyes open. Like I'm not going in kidding myself. I'll know what it looks like. And this is also where you better get it right with the coach. You better get it right with the coach because you've now, this will be your third coach in 4 years at this point with Brett Brown, Doc, and then whoever gets hired this year.
Okay. You're from here.
Yeah.
I've been here over 25 years. I know this Philadelphia fan base. I know the mindset. And I'm looking at people in our chat here. No way, bring Harden back. No, don't do it. Don't do it. These are the same people that come November, December. If they're struggling, this team sucks. We never should have let James Harden go. If they let Harden go, I don't have a problem with it because I'm not paying that man a max contract, at this stage of his career, especially after what I just saw He had 3 great games in the playoffs against Boston and 4 subpar games in that playoff series. So that tells me that James Harden is not going to give you that consistency you're looking for. But see, now Boston can say the same thing about a Jason Tatum and a Jaylen Brown. Where were our star players when we needed them the most?
Right.
I think this team is going to have to be very careful in terms of how they approach this thing and listening to the public outcry. It's going to be a feel. You got to have a feel for what is best for this team right now. We have somewhat of an unhappy Joel Embiid. How do we appease him? If we do bring Harden back, does it make us a better team? Does it make us the same team we already are? Does James Harden, hopefully we can sprinkle in a few more minor pieces here that's not going to kill us in the cap, make us a better team? This team right now is in a very unenviable position because of the way their money is structured and because of what we just saw, how this team fell flat on its face when they were at the doorstep of knocking Boston out of the playoffs and let them off the hook the last 2 games.
Okay, so that brings us to this. Are you willing to really go all in? Let Harden walk, trade Embiid, and really start over again. It's a hard pivot. You're talking about a guy who won the MVP, 30 years old. He'll play at 30 years old. He has a great connection with the fan base. And Derek, let's face it, this is a business. You want to keep filling those seats like the Sixers do. They do extremely well attendance-wise, okay? Are you willing to take the step that far? Now, I think some people are. In my opinion, I don't think the organization is. I do not think that they will move Joel Embiid, but it's not crazy. His value is never going to be higher. The older he gets, right now he's coming off an MVP. He's still relatively young. The older he gets, especially with him, it's kind of like dog years a little bit, right? I mean, in terms of like his body and whatnot. Do you waste another year? I mean, that's going to be the really hard pressing question that I really don't think they'll even entertain, but I think it has to be entertained. And look, Terry makes a good point. Terry's, you look at what Minnesota gave up, and I thought it was an absurd trade, but what they gave up to Utah to get, Gobert, multiple first round picks. You could get yourself draft picks again, which you don't have right now. You could really try to get athletic and get wings, which this league is right now, as opposed to running everything through your big and a ball dominant, one that you have with Harden. You could really pivot this thing and build it quickly, not in a process way where it's forever and you're just trying to lose. No, this would be your one fell swoop kind of move.
See, I don't want draft picks. I want players. I want players that can come in here and make this team a more exciting team. See, Miami has shown, and I can't use the Miami comparison enough. Miami has shown we don't have to be the biggest team. We always talk about bigs in the NBA. This is a big team. Miami doesn't have to be a big team. They're a tenacious team. Pat Riley's done a phenomenal job finding players off the street that just have a hunger and a desire to play. They don't worry about being stars in Miami. You know who the star is of that team. Jimmy Butler is the star of that team. It is not a star-studded team. But when you look at the supporting cast, they complement each other so well. And I want players. I don't want to have to go through getting a bunch of other draft pick type players and grooming them to play at this level, because then it's going to take them a while to get on the same page. If I can find that team that can give me 2, 3, 4 players that can come in here and complement this team right now, and if we're a bunch of 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" type players, but we're athletic, we can shoot. We have snipers like Denver does. Okay. If we're tenacious on defense like Miami is, then I'm all in that regard. I don't think the Sixers would even entertain a trade for Embiid unless they can get a collection of players like that, unless they can get a haul like that for Joel Embiid.
And look, I think it's fair because we know, if you look back at the process and you look at the guys who are still standing with all those draft picks that they accumulated, all the assets that they accumulated, Embiid's the only one still standing. I mean, I don't count Maxey because I think the process was over at that point, but that's it. Okafor, Nerlens Noel, Markelle Fultz, Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
None of them stuck. None of them. So we can sit here and talk about picks all we want, they're unproven commodities for all the faults and the warts of Joel Embiid and as small as he came up in that game. The guy's a great NBA player and will be a Hall of Famer. I'm with you. I don't just want assets. I want players coming back here who can actually play and make a difference.
See, Scott Lamont in the comment chats here says, Miami will suffer not being big in the finals against Jokic and Gordon. I disagree.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either.
Because Milwaukee is one of the tallest teams in the league. They took Milwaukee out. Boston was a taller team. They took Boston out. Okay? I mean, they're about to take Boston out.
Yeah.
This goes beyond just height. It has to do with athleticism. You know, a team like Miami, they can get up and down the floor. They got 5-6 guys that can knock down the threes. They can defend. You know, they have everything you need. They don't need height to get to where they want to go. I'm not so sure that Denver, being a bigger team, is just going to run over Miami. We've been waiting to see it all playoffs, and it hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So it goes with cohesiveness. Miami has told you, and they've shown you throughout the playoffs, you don't have to be the biggest team to be the best team. Did anybody in their wildest imaginations think that Miami would be sitting here up 3-0 on Boston with the first 2 games in Boston? Because if you say yes, you're lying. Because if you really watch the game the way it's played, nobody in their imagination thought Miami would be up 3-0 on Boston. Boston was a good shooting team until they faced this tenacious Miami team, the way Miami has taken them out of their game. Miami has people say, well, Boston's off. No, Miami has taken the game to them. Miami has taken them out of the game. Miami has forced them to take shots they don't want to take. Miami has beaten them on the boards. Miami's beating them up and down the court. Miami's supporting cast is killing Boston. Mm-hmm. That's what it came down to. Pat Riley putting his team together. I've never heard of a team with 7 undrafted players playing the way Miami's playing.
And Scott
right
says Gordon and Joker are pure power. No, they're not. No, they're not. There's a lot of finesse in Joker's game. It's not to say he can't play with his back to the basket. Of course he can. He's a multi-talented guy. But he hurts you in a number of different ways, playing that point center spot at the top of the key, watching guys dishing to them on cuts, hitting the 3. He can do a lot of different things. I mean, to your point, Derek, if you look at that Heat series with the Celtics, Joe Mazzulla abandoned the big lineup that he was going with that hurt the Sixers. The Robert Williams and Horford lineup, he abandoned it because Miami was just taking it apart. They can hurt you a million different ways. Miami's got shooting. You look at the way Gabe Vincent's shooting the ball, the way Strus is shooting the ball, the way Duncan Robinson's shooting the ball. But you also have Adebayo who can back you down and take it at you. You know, Jimmy Butler could do a million different things. I think there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. And I think that Miami's showing you a lot of versatility in their game and what they're able to do. So I don't view it that way. Like if they got to the finals, oh my God, all of a sudden they're screwed. I just don't think so. And I appreciate Scott's input. I'm just saying, I think there's a lot of different ways you can go about it.
You know what? Every team has a different formula, you know. And for me, when it comes to being successful, if a team has a measure of success, I'm looking at how they did it and trying to emulate some of that. Even if I have a so-called formula of how I want a team built, a lot of times you have to deviate from the norm. The style of play changes. The bigs as we knew it 10 years ago is not the way bigs play the game today for the most part, you know. And we've talked about this time and time again. You know, the way Joel Embiid nowadays is a rarity compared to the way bigs play across the board in the NBA nowadays. So I think the Sixers have to start looking at that and say, okay, we've got to change our formula in terms of how we want this team to be structured, how we want our offense to look. Do we need to get quicker up and down the floor? Do we need faster players along the perimeter? Because that was one of the Sixers' biggest problems. Their perimeter defense was always a half second slow. You know, do we need to get quicker? How do we go about doing that? I got to tell my scouting department, these are the kind of players you got to find me somewhere. You got to help me. You got to find these players because what we have right now has not worked the last 3 years to get past the second round. We've got to change the mindset to improve this product.
Well, yeah, and I think that also goes to a much bigger question as well. Like, can you win now with that guy? Like, in other words, obviously, Denver's having a lot of success, but Joker's a different kind of big. can you win with the kind of big that Embiid is? I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good question. It is definitely a wing dominated league. That's for sure. And that's the other thing I think you have to take into account. I mean, it's a changing of the guard, so to speak, no pun intended, in a lot of ways in that league. But I feel like, I guess the thing I can't get past, Derek, more than anything else is I don't know if Embiid has that chromosome that that you need in the big game. I just don't know that that's there after what I saw, but then again here, let me just real quick, just circle back to the game last night, not to harp too much on this, but the thing that I think that we have to sort of accept begrudgingly now is that players and teams do lay down in big games. How do you account for what Boston did last night? How do you account for what the Sixers did in Game 7? Like, it's almost unfathomable that it's a reality, but it sort of is a reality now with today's players. It's different.
Well, I can counter with this also. I don't disagree with you. First of all, let me say that, because there's a part of me that agrees with you. But then I'll go to the other series. You look at the Lakers. They haven't quit in any of those games.
Oh, I agree. They haven't.
They just keep falling short.
Yep.
They're just being outplayed by a better team right now, a deeper team, a more versatile team. The Lakers are giving it 100%. All 3 games with the Lakers have been entertaining games. And you sit there holding your breath thinking, okay, the Lakers are about to pull this off. And then all of a sudden, Denver rallies and takes the game away from them. You're right. We've seen the Sixers in Boston just flat out curl up in a corner and put their thumbs in their mouths and call it a day. That is on the players. You are highly played individuals who should have a lot of pride. Okay? And when things are going bad, no matter how things are, you keep playing like you've never played before.
Yeah.
And yet the Sixers players and the Boston players have done the complete opposite. Okay. That's on the players. People say, well, that's the coach. Nah, it's not the coach. It's the players. It's your desire. It's your will to compete. Even when you feel like you're being embarrassed, even when you feel like no matter what you do, it's just not your day. You go out there. People pay good money to see you give 100% effort from start to finish. If you're severely banged up, you just do what you can to keep rolling. We get that. Yeah. But when your frontline players are there, you have got to play better than you're showing. You're stealing money. It's basically what you're doing. Yeah. You're cheating the fans out of a good product, and you're stealing money. Is the bottom line.
One thing, and Scott, last thing on Scott, he said Embiid has not had a good coach, someone who needs to teach him how to play tough and forget about the layups.
Could be.
Right on the ball. I don't disagree with that at all. And I think that one of the things, whoever they end up doing, and apparently the candidates are Nick Nurse, Monty Williams, Budenholzer, D'Antoni. Am I missing anybody? Frank Vogel, maybe. I think that's it. Part of the conversation for me, if I'm Daryl Morey in the Sixers front office with whichever candidate, I'm going to give them carte blanche to be a little bit harder on him and lean into him a little bit more. And look, if he pushes back, he pushes back. Maybe that's what leads to his exit the following year or the year after that, whatever. But I would absolutely, and it's a fine line now because guys will check out. I know, but you got to be a little bit harder on him.
That's a valid point. But if I'm a new coach coming in, I need my MVP, my frontline player, all on board, because the other players will rally around his mood, his body language. I don't need him moping. That's a tough balance, because you're right. There are times when he needs to be pushed. There are times in practices and in games where coach needs to get in the star player's face and go, "What the heck are you doing? You're better than this, man. Wake up. What are you doing?" Mm-hmm. But is Embiid the kind of player, will he pout or will he accept that challenge? Will it rejuvenate him if a coach yells at him, or will he shut down? It's the same thing with your kids. Some of your kids, when you yell at them, it makes them stronger. Some of them you have to use with kid gloves, because if you yell at them, they curl up and shut down. I don't have a true gauge in terms of what Embiid is when it comes to that. Did Doc Rivers treat him like the pampered child, or did Doc Rivers ever really get on him? We never saw it. And obviously no writer ever wrote about it because the Sixers practices are closed for the most part. They only let the media in at the end when they're doing a shoot around. So anything that really went on in the practice, you don't get to see.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know what type of mental makeup an Embiid has.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, let's come back. I want to give you a little football news, Derek, when we come back. I'll give you that.
All right.
And then we'll dive a little bit into the Phillies, and then we'll get into our GOATs, our all-time greats on the offensive side of the ball based on the passing of Jim Brown. So we'll do all those kind of things when we get back. Don't go anywhere. Derek Gunn, Rob Ellis, Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. I want to tell you about Pro Action Restoration. Whether it's fire or water or smoke or mold damage, whatever the case may be, if a property you own, if your home, your business gets hit with that, man, it is really, really difficult. And they are the place that you reach out to if that happens, because they will not only get there in a speedy fashion, they will clean up the problem and it will be done right. I can tell you that from personal experience. I went through this a few years back at my parents' house. It was a Saturday. They got flooded in their basement. I reached out to Pro Action Restoration. They got right there. They cleaned up the mess, and it could not have been a better situation. It was just a giant relief for me and my parents. They are licensed, bonded, fully insured. They've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. Pro Action Restoration will work in conjunction with your insurance company. So again, it could be water, it could be fire, it could be smoke damage, mold remediation. You name it, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com. That's proactionrestoration.com.